Good morning and welcome to Convocation.
My name is Cora Wu. I'm a former English major and a newly inspired theater major. I am not only a full-time student here at Hudson, but I am also a single mom of 4 boys, ages 18, 12, 11, and 6. My 18-year-old attends classes here as a LEAP student, and he loves the fact that he's able to do so. He gets to see me every day. See, I decided to return to school at 38 years old, 20 plus years later, raising a family, and during that time I have faced some barriers of my own. I started my first semester here at Hudson in the fall of 2017, and in the spring of 2018, I lost my mom to cervical cancer. But during and after her battle, I was still able to maintain a GPA deserving of the Dean's List. Thank you. Not even a year later, in the spring of 2019, I lost my dad to heart disease. But again, quitting wasn't an option, and I finished the semester with a 4.0. At that point, it was like my world was falling apart because my parents were my biggest cheerleaders, and with them gone, I had no clue how I was going to finish school, but I knew my parents wouldn't want me to quit. That, and along with the support I received not only from my peers and the Hudson staff, but also from my professors, is what kept me focused and driven. I went on to be selected to participate in a writing residency here at Hudson and become a part of several honor societies like Phi Theta Kappa, VP of Sigma Kappa Delta, and President of Alpha Sigma Lambda. I also started a club for non-traditional students with the help of my friend and VP Crystal Newton, called the Later in Life Leaders. I'm also a part of America Needs You, the EOF program, Hudson's Own Dream Team, student government, and I'm a writer for the Orator. As a student here, I have been given many opportunities. I was invited to attend the ACCT conference with Dr. Reber, and I was also invited to go to the office of Senator Sandra Cunningham to speak about the CCOG grant. But the most exciting of them all was being invited to be the student speaker here today. My current position at the college outside of being a student is as a peer leader, and it's one of the most important positions that a student can hold. As a peer leader, I hear students' complaints, but I also hear their praises, and for me, Hudson deserves all the praise. The support that I have received has been nothing short of phenomenal, and the encouragement surpasses empowering. You see, there were so many things that were thrown my way to derail the successes that I had not only set up for myself, but also the successes that Hudson has set up for me. The same successes that they set up for every single student that walks through these doors. They won't come easy, though. Just like everything else, you have to work for them, and the professors will make sure that we as students are held accountable, and as students, we might not say it enough, but thank you for that. Lastly, I would like to leave you with this. For the students here today, take advantage of every opportunity that is offered to you, and if it's not offered, then seek it out. The staff and administration are here to help you succeed. No one wants to see you fail. To the faculty, I ask that you continue to listen to the students because we can tell you what other students want and need to be successful. I also ask that we all continue to make Hudson a home away from home. Thank you, President Reber, Dr. Friedman, VP Lisa, Professor Lai for the opportunity to be a part of PTK, Professor Bach for SKD. Thank you, Student Life and Leadership, my professors, friends, fellow students, staff, my mom and dad who I wear around my neck and close to my heart so that they will forever be with me. Thank you to my sons, and thank you all for listening. I hope that me speaking my truth today has inspired someone in the room to live theirs. Thank you.
It was my extreme honor to be invited to serve on the President's Advisory Council for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And sometimes we forget to take those off. But I think it's going to be an exciting year. I'm looking forward to all of the suggestions and the comments, all of the discussions, all of the activities and the experiences that we will have. something that I never imagined would take place in my time as a person to work at a community college. So I am so honored and I am so happy to be in that role, and we welcome you to this brand new academic year.
Good morning, everyone. First of all, I just want to say that, Coral, I'm inspired by your story. That's incredible. And today we're talking about barriers, and the work that we do day in and day out, it deals with that, whether it's in the classroom or outside. And the wonderful thing about Convocation is that all of us, faculties here, as well as administrators, the people that are the counselors, the librarians, that often are not able to be here. But this group is very near and dear to my heart. I'm very excited to be a part of it. We have 33 members. We were only able to get 33 members in this group. No, the truth is that there was a lot of interest. Clearly, and topics that we'll be discussing that we're all very passionate about, and we know that our college, our location, the students that we serve, it's a very important issue that we all need to address. So just know that these 33 individuals that are there, the work being done is not just going to be done by them. We're going to be relying on you. We're going to be reaching out to you to get input, to get you involved. And again, I'm very excited to be a part of this. I'm very excited to be here on this stage today, and I just want to wish everyone a very exciting and productive semester. Thank you.
Thank you, Uris. And now we will have opening remarks from our own president, Dr. Christopher Reber. Let's welcome him with a round of applause.
Thank you so much. And Coral, wow. I've gotten to know Coral, and like so many of our students, she's inspirational. She is really a manifestation of what all of us are here for. And I have to just share my own. Later in life, I became aware of her story and really inspired by it. And I was asked to go to Trenton to advocate before the Senate Budget Committee the Community College Opportunity Grant. Coral's a recipient of that grant, and I invited her to join me. And so I was going to meet her in the lobby of 70 Sip Avenue. We're going to drive together. And I went down there, and I knew she had an 18-year-old son. And I looked, and I thought, that can't be Coral. She can't have an 18-year-old son. And anyway, it's been a pleasure getting to know you. We are all so inspired by you. And thanks for your remarks. And I want to just say good morning to all of you. This is, one of the really most exciting days of the year. Dr. May, welcome to Hudson County Community College. We're honored to have you here. I know he had to make a change in his travel plans in order to be here, and he did it because he wants to be here, and we are so honored to have you here and look forward to your remarks. Like all the good things that we do at Hudson County Community College, Convocation requires caring and diligent planning, including, I think, the herding of cats at times. And our valued colleague, Lalisa Williams, has led the coordination of this important day and also playing a major role in making today the success I know it's going to be. Are Jen Christopher, Heather DeVries, Lisa Doherty, Eric Friedman, Linda Guastini, Karen McLaughlin, Aaron Ranone, and Willie Shire, and I know I've left others out, but please join me in thanking these valued colleagues. Thank you all. The theme of our recent College Service Day and of today's program is appropriately, as you know, breaking down barriers to student success. I think we're off to a great beginning in our focused efforts this year around continuous improvement in student success, including retention, completion, transfer, and gainful employment. Supported by our new work with Achieving the Dream, these efforts will bring us to new levels of accomplishment in this mission-central area of priority. By the way, I should have mentioned, did you notice Coral is on all the buses as well? As I shared at College Service Day, this work that we're doing together around student success is fundamental to our goal of reaching the pinnacle of excellence as a high-achieving, comprehensive urban community college that offers a personal and caring environment for student engagement, which are cornerstones for student learning and student success. And pervading and underpinning the work of Achieving the Dream is equity, which will integrate seamlessly with our collective efforts to promote continuous improvement in our community's advancement and support for diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm pleased to comment on some important outcomes and initiatives since we met in late August. It's hard to believe it's been that long, but when we last met at College Service Day. So I know some of you have heard some of these, but I wanted to just take this occasion when we're all together to bring visibility to some important recent happenings. First, our Board of Trustees approved the hiring of consultants to work with our college community in two very important areas that we all know are often barriers to student success. First, how we respond as a college community to emergencies, including reaching out to support individuals who may be in distress. And second, providing support and services to ensure accessibility to our programs and facilities for everyone. And I emphasize services. Both consultants will work with the college community to help us analyze current practice and develop and ultimately reach and exceed goals for continuous improvement in these areas of critical importance to our student support and equity initiatives. Dr. Brian Van Brunt will visit Hudson County Community College on Monday, October 28th. He's Executive Director of the National Behavioral Intervention Team Association and past president of the American College Counseling Association. And disability management consultant Salome Hayward and Associates will visit Tuesday through Thursday, December 3rd through 5th. Now, these are the first visits of what will be, I think, in both cases, a number of visits. Salome Hayward is one of the nation's leading legal experts regarding compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act and the Rehabilitation Act. She's the author of several books about access to education for the disabled. I want to thank Vice President Lisa Doherty, Associate Dean of Student Success, Dr. Sheila Dinan, and their colleagues for their leadership of these continuous improvement initiatives that will definitely lead us to dismantling barriers for many members of our community. Thank you. Thank you. How about a round of applause for them? I also thank Associate Dean of Student Affairs, Dr. David Clark, Phi Theta Kappa President Christine Torrado, Student Government Association President Warren Rigby, Executive Director of Engineering and Operations Ilya Ashman, Executive Director of Public Safety Jack Quigley, and their many colleagues for their exemplary leadership to grow and improve our food pantries and to develop Hudson Helps support services, as well as advancing our green and recycling initiatives throughout the college. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. On Saturday, September 21st, our Board of Trustees and I participated in an engaging, productive, and enjoyable all-day retreat facilitated by Dr. Darian Pollard, president of Montgomery College near Washington, D.C. Most of you will remember, and it's a fond memory, that Dr. Pollard chaired the Middle States visiting team that conducted our decennial reaccreditation site visit last spring. Our retreat topics included student success, diversity, equity, and inclusion, support for our employees, board president best practices, and discussion of a recent board self-assessment here at HCCC. It was the first such retreat in many years, and the board and I have agreed to continue to schedule times such as this for the board's and my professional development in support of you. Dr. Pollard will be sending us a summary report of our discussions and ideas for the future, which we will use as a framework for our upcoming activities and goal setting in support of our college community. And at the retreat, we were delighted to welcome new trustees Adam Maris Galvin and Joseph Doria, who were recently appointed by the Hudson County Board of Chosen Freeholders to succeed trustees Kevin Callahan and Joanne Kozakowski, whose terms have expired. Dr. Doria is currently Dean of the School of Education at St. Peter's University. His career includes many years of public service as a member of the Bayonne Board of Education, the New Jersey State Assembly, the New Jersey State Senate, Mayor of Bayonne, and Commissioner of the New Jersey Department of Public Affairs, among others. A resident of North Bergen, Ms. Galvin's career has focused on bilingual and ESL education. She began her career as a bilingual teacher with the North Bergen Board of Education and progressed as supervisor of North Bergen's bilingual ESL program and director of the ESL Adult Night School at Hudson County Schools of Technology. Our new trustees will be sworn in at our October 8th Board of Trustees meeting, that's next Tuesday, where we'll also recognize outgoing trustees Callahan and Kozakowski and recently retired trustee Adrienne Series. We look forward to thanking these long-serving trustees for their years of leadership, advocacy, and support for our college. Well, as Lalisa and Uris mentioned, our new President's Advisory Council on Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion has in fact been appointed, and it will hold in fact its organizational meeting tomorrow. I want to thank all who have agreed to serve on this council. I think 33 is what I heard. This includes students, faculty, staff, administration, trustees, foundation board members, and community leaders. And I want to take this opportunity to offer special appreciation to Lalisa Williams and Eurus Pujols, who've agreed to co-chair the council. This is exceedingly important work. Thank you, Lalisa and Eurus. Thank you so much. I'm pleased to share an update pertaining to our engagement with the college's and region's Hispanic community. I'm delighted to share that he's going to have a big head before this day is over. North Hudson Campus Executive Director Eurus Pujols will be honored at the January 31st Awards Gala of Save Latin America. This is, as many of you know, an organization in Union City committed to serving the Hispanic community through education, wellness, social, and economic development programs and services. And the theme of this year's gala is education, and I'm honored to have been invited as well to serve as the keynote speaker. We'll be inviting members of the entire college community to attend that gala and honor Eurus. Yes. And recently we hosted a meeting here, just a week or two ago, of about 20 Latino clergy from throughout our region. We had a really productive and wide-ranging conversation about how we can work together to support our students and our community. We plan to continue to meet periodically to develop goals and initiatives around student recruitment, student success, and community needs and aspirations. And on Friday, I'll be attending the annual conference of the Hispanic Association of Colleges and Universities, or HACU, with 4 of our students, as well as Eurus and Executive Vice President and Provost Dr. Eric Friedman. Our student attendees will be Kat Colon, President of the Feminism for All Club, Treasurer of the Criminal Justice Club and a peer leader; Suri Hidalgo, President of the Criminal Justice Club and a peer leader; Rafael Castro, an America Needs You Fellow and member of our Educational Opportunity Fund program; and Kaylin Segovia Vasquez, President of the Theater Arts Club, Vice President of Public Relations for Phi Theta Kappa, co-chair of the Honor Student Council, and a peer leader. Are any of them here today by chance? Probably not. Excellent, Suri's there. Congratulations, and we look forward to going to the conference. The conference is going to be held in Chicago, and it will bring together students and educators from all United States higher education sectors, and particularly individuals from Hispanic serving institutions such as HCCC. We're delighted to congratulate our colleague, Assistant Professor for English and ESL, Chandradot Persad. Is he here? Is Chandradot here? There he is. He's back there. Sorry, I didn't let you know I was doing this. Chandradot was honored recently by Mayor Stephen Fulop, by City Council President Rolando Lavaro, and the City of Jersey City for, and I quote, his contributions in building a stronger social, economic, and diverse culture that brings pride to the community. Professor Prasad was further recognized for his years of service in advocating immigrants' rights. Congratulations, Chandradot, and thank you for your inspirational leadership. And we also, it's so wonderful to be able to talk about the work you do, which is so inspiring. We also celebrate the students, faculty, and staff at Hudson County Community College's Abigail Douglas Johnson Center. The centers received the Frank L. Christ Award from the National College Learning Association. This award recognizes the outstanding learning center among all two-year colleges nationwide. And we especially thank and congratulate Assistant Vice President Chris Wall, Associate Dean Pam Bandiopatier, and head tutors Kyle Woolley and Natalia Vasquez-Bodkin for their leadership in securing this prestigious award that brings pride to our entire college community. Thank you. A few weeks ago, we held a program and reception at our new Secaucus Center located at the located at the Frank Gargiulo campus of Hudson County Schools of Technology. Secaucus, Hoboken. Many members of our HCCC community and the Schools of Technology community attended, including County Executive Tom DeGeese and HCCC trustees Bill Netchard and Karen Fahrenholtz. Our fall enrollment at the Secaucus Center is nearly 170 students. This includes early college high school students, 100 or so, and nearly 70 community members who are taking our credit courses there in the evenings for the first time. I want to thank Secaucus Center Executive Director Dr. Chris Conzen, Student Success Coach Adriana Soto, Program Assistant Mariel Shinnick, and so many others for this great beginning to what we expect will be a growing part of our college and a wonderful new partnership. Would they stand if they're here? Chris. Last week, Vice President for External Relations, Dr. Nicholas Chevrolotti, Dean of Workforce and Continuing Education, Laurie Margolin, and Associate Dean of STEM, Dr. Burl Yearwood, hosted a breakfast for 14 members of the Hudson County Building and Construction Trades Council, including Council President Patrick Kelleher. Union representatives attending included plumbers, carpenters, ironworkers, painters, bricklayers, and others. Discussion included HCCC technical studies and construction management degrees and our college's offering of up to 30 credits for prior experience and training, such as training received through union apprenticeship programs. I'm pleased to share that we'll be offering a 12-week continuing education AutoCAD program for the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, IBEW, Local 164 at their Paramus training facility in November. And I want to thank Burl, Laurie, and Nicholas for this very important work with our regional unions. That's an important component of our growing programs in construction management, advanced manufacturing, workforce development, and related areas. Thank you. Our student success agenda is focused on the continuous improvement of our efforts to recruit and retain our students, as we all know. We've been discussing our retention and completion efforts across the college, and what I hope you feel, as I do, is really energizing and inspirational work. Punctuated, of course, by our Achieving the Dream affiliation. While we continue to address challenges in our recruitment efforts, as opposed to retention, our overall fall enrollment is down approximately 2.5%. We're also experiencing success in important areas of enrollment that are priorities in our enrollment management plan and the work of our Enrollment Management Council, chaired by Vice President Lisa Doherty. This success bodes extremely well for our future with respect to our goal of expanding access to Hudson County Community College and post-secondary education for more members of our community. The technical education work that I just mentioned is an example of this. We're also seeing, I just want to mention a few things that I think are really exciting. We're seeing increased enrollment in our quick-term, late start, on-the-ground, and online courses. Enrollment of students in our Educational Opportunity Fund, or EOF, program is up over 100% compared to last year. That's 200 students enrolled this year compared to about 100 last year. Congratulations and thanks to Jose Lowe and the entire EOF team. Please stand, all EOF team members. Yes. Similarly, our honors program enrollment is currently up a whopping 188%. That's 144 students enrolled this year, including for the first time new students who have enrolled in our honors program compared to 50 last year. Wow. Congratulations and thanks to Jenny Bobea, our faculty, and all who have made this wonderful outcome possible. Is Jenny here? Jenny, thank you. And in addition to continuing students, new student enrollment is up significantly in both of these programs that have a history of strong retention and student success outcomes. So this growth is not only growth through the front door, it's likely going to support our retention and completion efforts as well. Online student enrollment is up 8% over last year with a 2% increase in new student online enrollment. And very importantly, we have this fall 69 students enrolled in fully online programs compared to 39 last fall. We are, as you know, are strategically adding 2 or more fully online programs each year with the support and leadership of our faculty and others. And I think this is the beginning of what you are going to see as an upward trend of enrollment that will allow us to reach populations who can't be here in seats, and so will serve more members of our community. I want to thank Executive Director of Online Learning, Archana Bandari, and her team, our academic leaders, and many faculty and staff for their contributions to these outcomes that portend continued growth going forward. Is Archana here? Archana, thank you, and thank everybody. Our health sciences enrollment is up 5.12% this year on top of a similar increase last year. They've been seeing sustained enrollment increases. at a time when the nation is moving in the other direction in community colleges, due to the economy in large measure. But I want to say kudos and thanks to Dean Catherine Sarangelo and all the faculty and staff in what I call our School of Nursing and Health Sciences. I don't think it's officially that, but I've been calling it that. In addition to celebrating sustained enrollment growth in nursing and health sciences, as I think I mentioned at a town hall meeting, we celebrate the continuing excellence of the school's students, faculty, and staff. Apropos of that, we learned recently that students in our radiography program who recently took the American Registry of Radiologic Technologists, or ARRT exam, had a perfect 100% pass rate. And this, coupled with the 94% pass rate first time out on the nursing NCLEX exam, places our School of Nursing and Health Sciences in the top tier of like programs in New Jersey and nationwide. So congratulations, Dean Sarangelo, Radiography Program Director Cheryl Cashel, and all the students, faculty, and staff who contributed to this fabulous outcome. Please stand if you would. Thank you. Cheryl's back there. And enrollment in new programs is up significantly over last year. These include medical science, pre-professional, exercise science, homeland security, addiction counseling, and cybersecurity. Total fall 2019 enrollment in these new programs is 300 compared to 111 last fall when they debuted. This represents a 170% increase. Many thanks to Heather DeVries and all the faculty and staff, including many of you here today who have developed and nurtured these growing programs. Thank you. Is Heather here? Yes, she is. Stand, Heather. And our Community College Opportunity Grant, or CCOG, enrollment is up significantly this fall over last spring's initial CCOG enrollment. This makes it possible for students like Coral to achieve their dreams. To date, nearly 1,000 Hudson County Community College students this semester are CCOG recipients, and of these, over 210 are new to Hudson County Community College this fall. These students collectively are receiving nearly $1.4 million in new CCOG grant funds. This is a near doubling of total dollars awarded last spring when the program debuted as a pilot. And so we also expect continued growth in spring 2020 CCOG enrollment and going forward as we increasingly are able to bring information about this opportunity to all parts of our community. This hasn't been easy. It's a great thing, but the details have always lagged, and we've been trying to keep up with that, and we have. And I want to really thank Associate Dean for Financial Aid, Sylvia Mendoza, Associate Dean for Enrollment Services, Matt Fessler, and all members of their teams for these outstanding outcomes. Please stand and accept our thanks. They're out recruiting students. We have others. So to finish, outcomes such as these are truly the result of everyone's efforts. It truly takes a village, so to speak. So I want to say this morning, congratulations to everyone. Thank you all for a wonderful beginning to our academic year and for all you do for our students, our college, and our community. Enjoy the day. Thank you.
All right, we're going to just move the agenda along. Good morning, everyone. I think I broke my pinky clapping for all of those things. I'm not even kidding you. But no pain, no gain. It was worth it. There's a lot of positive things happening at the college. So I am really pleased to share with you some of the ways we are supporting our students holistically. As many of you know, we're calling this the umbrella of this program, Hudson Helps, and that is our fresh off the press logo, thanks to Jen Christopher and her team. Unfortunately, David Clark cannot be with us today. He had a death in the family, so please do keep him and his family in your thoughts and prayers. Really, anything that falls under holistic student supports, I want you to think of as Hudson Helps. So all of the things outside of the classroom and all of the ways that we support our students. This is the mission of Hudson Helps, to provide thoughtful, caring, and comprehensive information on access to services, programs, and resources that will assist in addressing the basic needs beyond the classroom, ultimately resulting in greater student success. And this is a work in progress. As you will see, we've had a few phases of this, and the final phase will be in spring 2020. So this is part of Dr. Clark's new responsibilities, is overseeing Hudson Helps. So I really want to thank him and his team for this. So Why did we start Hudson Helps? And you can find research no matter where you look. There are many, many different statistics and facts that you can find. The one that I cited here is that nationwide, 42% of community college students are food insecure, 46% are housing insecure, and 12% of community college students are homeless. So these numbers are stark, they are concerning, and what's really the whole reason we put this all together is that we can see our students in those numbers. And and I know as faculty members, you have students in your class that you're thinking, yeah, I know that I have students who are hungry or haven't slept or don't know where they're going to sleep tonight. So that is why we developed Hudson Helps. So this is where we were, and this is from Achieving the Dream. They're doing a lot of great work on holistic student supports, as we all know. But we had a lot of ways we were supporting our students, but they were sort of all over the college, and I know sometimes as faculty and staff we don't really know where to refer a student. So we had supports, they were really solid, but they were sort of all over the place and not concentrated. Where we're going, and we're not quite there yet, is holistically supporting our students so that we're really wrapping around these services, wrapping them around our students. So whether a student needs mental health counseling or career services or academic support, tutoring, advising, food, access to immigration support. So I could fill that circle with probably a dozen other ways we're supporting our students. This is the model or the framework from Achieving the Dream. We all know the phase one was the food pantries. Those got off the ground last March, and that was really a labor of love of so many people in the college community, from faculty, staff, students, and Ashlyn Acosta, our part-timer. Is she here? She's managing our food pantries and doing just really an awesome job of sustaining them. It's one thing to open them. It's another to keep them up and running and stocked. Donations and visitors thus far in Journal Square, almost 400 students. This is actually as of August, so we're sure that during the month of September there have been more. And North Hudson, almost 300 students. So we are in the process of getting refrigeration so that we can take it to the next level in terms of offering students packaged meals and more healthy alternatives. So coming in spring 2020, our PTK service project is helping us with the refrigeration and fresh produce, so being able to bring really healthy options to our students, collaborating with the culinary program and Flick to freeze, what do you call it, Paul? Blast freeze meals for students, and when our culinary students make big batches of soup, being able to freeze them and get them over to the food pantry. The New Jersey Hunger Free Campus Grant, we're applying for that. That will give us much needed funds to really enhance our services. We are partnering with the Community Food Bank and also have some fundraising and donation events planned. So definitely check the portal for ways that you can donate. There's a silent dance party on October 11th, next Friday night, where students are asked to bring five donations to the food pantry. So really trying to keep that sustained. Phase 2 is our portal page. So if you go on the portal under Student Services, there's an option for Hudson Helps. And these are just some of the links that we're providing. The first one I want to point out is brand new, the Hudson Helps grant application. And this is for students who need emergency funding. So they've had some sort of life event that means that they maybe are in danger of being evicted or having their power shut off or their car breaks down, they can't get to school. So it's a financial burden that's going to stand in the way of them attending or enrolling or persisting in college. There's an application. They simply have to fill out what the need is, and in most cases we pay directly to the vendor, whether it's an electric company or a landlord or a car repair shop. So when in doubt, send a student there and we will do everything we can to assist them. There's other resources here. There's the directory for alcoholism and drug abuse services, mental health services, NJ SNAP, different transportation options, and then immigration information. So we're adding to this constantly. If you have any suggestions or resources that you're aware of, please do send those to Dr. Clark. I want to welcome to our team, is Doreen here? If you could stand, Doreen Pontius. She is our new Associate Director of Counseling and Wellness. We're really trying to separate and isolate our academic advising services from our mental health counseling services. Very, very different needs for our students. So our advisors help students register, and our counselors really help students with those other needs. So she is located in the advising and counseling area right now. This is a new referral form she just developed. She's been here like 5 minutes, so we're really, really excited about this, and I feel as faculty you'll really benefit from this, where you can just fill this out. It's on the portal under advising and counseling. It goes directly to Doreen, and then she can reach out and do what she needs to do to help our students. So please, we will email you a copy also, but definitely see that on the portal, and she is here to help our students with those needs. And finally, the future of Hudson Helps. We will have a physical space on the 3rd floor of Building A, where we will have access to a career closet for students. Counseling and wellness will be housed there. Emergency aid can be sought out there. We will have social work interns there helping our students. Different social services agencies that can have hoteling space there, immigration services, housing and security, NJ-SNAP, and others. So this is a place where students can go and get all types of wraparound holistic supports. If you have any questions about Hudson Helps, please do see myself or Dr. Clark. And again, it's a work in progress. We appreciate your support, and always refer students to the Student Affairs Office if they have any type of need that's really outside of the classroom that we can assist with, and we're happy to do so. So I now have the pleasure of bringing up John Scanlon, our new Executive Director of Institutional Research. Thank you.
I've been doing this work for 15 years, and it's still really hard for me to describe it at a cocktail party. Which may also indicate how boring my cocktail parties are if I'm talking about institutional research. We are going to get to what institutional research is and what it does at Hudson, but one thing, if you know anything about us, you know that we are into data. We like to talk about data. So I'm going to start with a number. 13%. This is a very important number for Hudson County Community College. Does anyone know what that number is? Graduation rate. It certainly is a graduation rate. What graduation of what? From whom? From what? First time, full time, 3-year graduation rate. Yeah, it's a number. We're going to talk about it. This is the definition, which is used in various places, including federal reporting. It's the 150% graduation rate for the fall 2016 first-time, full-time cohort. That's a mouthful. And another thing you'll learn about institutional researchers, we like to define things and understand what exactly we're looking at. So I'm going to break this down, starting from right to left. Full-time, a student attempting 12 or more credits, pretty straightforward. First-time, this one's a little gnarly. A student enrolled for credit in an institution of higher education for the first time ever. I put an asterisk there because identifying that whether someone's enrolled for the first time ever is actually a notoriously difficult activity across higher education. And then 150% graduation rate. This is the percentage of students entering in an entering cohort that graduate within 150% of the expected program length. That's still pretty weedy, that's a mouthful. Let's shrink it to practical terms. An associate's degree is a 2-year degree. 150% of 2 years is 3 years. So it's the percentage of students who graduate, associate degree students who graduate within 3 years of starting the program. So that's a definition. That's what our most recent number is. We can't have a more recent number because that's for fall 2016 and we're at fall 2019. But it's still only a number on a page. So what I'm interested in as an institutional researcher is sort of what's the narrative behind this, what's the story, how did we get from fall 2016 to that 13%? Here's one way to look at it. So fall 2016, that cohort, there was about 1,600 students. By the next fall, 1 year later, there were 928 still enrolled at the college. That's 58%. That's another important metric in higher education. It's called the fall-to-fall retention rate. So when you see someone say fall-to-fall retention, that's what we're talking about. That means 42% of the students in that cohort were no longer enrolled the following fall. The fall after that, fall 2018, we have 35% of the students enrolled, and a very small percentage, 3%, had graduated in that 2-year period. And then we get to current year, fall 2019, 206 of the students from that cohort have graduated, so that's our 13%. But 274, or 17%, are still enrolled. So a couple of things I want to say here. This is, and I'll talk about this a little bit further, this is an important measure for many reasons, including federal reporting. But just because we report this now doesn't mean that this story is over, right? So we still have 274 students from that cohort actively enrolled at the college, working to complete their degrees. Historical data shows us that if we stretch this out to 6 years, about another 100 of those students will complete their degree. So we'll get up to 23 or 24% if we go along historical paths. That is a common in community colleges, that you need to really stretch out the time to degree to really understand who's completing and when. In fact, a 6-year graduation rate is emerging as a sort of alternative standard to the 3-year for that very purpose. So, promise this is the last slide about 13%. It's clearly an important number for compliance reporting and comparative purposes, because we get compared to other institutions along this number. But it's certainly not the only important figure, and it's not the only figure we need to measure and keep track of. We are currently below state and national averages, although I will say we've been ticking up in recent years, which is a positive sign. And we're below our accreditor's threshold, which is 15%, which means we have to report back to them every year about why we're not meeting the 15%. We're getting there, however. Something you all know is that this measure is not really aligned with our mission and our population. A large percentage of our students enroll in ESL and or developmental education in their first year and subsequent years. And that's almost by definition, they can't get to college readiness and then get into the program courses and then complete within 3 years. This is not unique to Hudson, but we are sort of on the leading edge of this phenomenon. We have a long tail of graduation students come in, come out, they go part-time, they leave, they come back. So they complete their degrees, but over an extended period of time. And in general, in the higher education space, open admissions institutions have lower graduation rates than their selective counterparts. That's just a fact of the world. The other really important thing as we move to the second part of what I want to talk about, which is data richness, is that the graduation rate is really what we call a lagging indicator. It's an indicator that tells us the result of something, the output of something, but it is very hard to change that at the moment you measure it, right? So a lagging indicator is easy to measure, but it's hard to change. We can't go out and physically cause people to graduate once they haven't in 3 years. What's really important from a student success perspective and from a measurement perspective is to focus on leading indicators. Some important ones that we're getting from Achieving the Dream are early momentum. Are students enrolling in and completing a full set of credits in their first year? That's really important. Early engagement. Are students feeling connected emotionally, socially, and intellectually to the college at which they're enrolled? And again, how can we measure that? And then persistence. This is obvious, but are students coming back? Are they re-enrolling? Are they making their way out of developmental ed into college readiness and then into their program courses? The thing about leading indicators is they are easy to change. You can do a lot of interventions to change the way those indicators work, but they're actually hard to measure because there are so many variables involved. The analogy that you often see is if you're trying to lose weight, right? The lagging indicator is you get on the scale and you see, oh, I lost weight or I gained weight. But the leading indicators, what drove that, is incredibly complicated. Is it diet? Is it exercise? Is it genetics? How do we measure those? When do we measure them? It's the same problem in a space like completing a degree. What do we want to measure and when do we want to measure, and how is that going to predict the outcomes? So this is a phrase, data richness, that Achieving the Dream has kind of introduced as something that campuses should aspire to be. They introduce the phrase, but they don't really define what it means. They would say you should define it the way you want it to be. So a couple of ways that I've defined it here. I think data richness means we ask important questions, even if they're not always the best questions or the most cheery questions, but we ask important questions and then we try to answer them. We make data accessible to everyone. And accessible doesn't just mean it's out there on a website, but it means we define it, we give the context in which it should be interpreted, and we strive to make it as clear as possible to people looking at it. You'll often hear the phrase data-driven decision-making. I highly prefer the phrase data-informed decision-making. Not all decisions are driven by data. Not all decisions use data. And a data decision that is purely driven by data would be algorithmic and would mean the robots are now in charge, and I don't think any of us want that yet. And finally, and to me this is really important as an institutional researcher, data richness is a shared responsibility of everyone on campus. It's not an IR office sitting off in the corner whose job it is to percolate data and use data. It's everyone's job, and we are here to help and to facilitate all this activity in making use of data and making use of it richly. So, back to us, who are we? We are a small team. We sit over at 168 SIP. There's 3 of us. There's me, there's Parth Dudeja. Parth, are you here? He's a research analyst. Parth started in the winter. He started in the office, yep. And then Dorothea Graham King. Dorothea, are you here? Well, many of you know, oh, there she is. Many of you know Dorothea. She's the deep institutional memory in the office and helps the office really function, I have to say. And there's our contact information. And what do? We work importantly in a couple of different dimensions. Compliance reporting, extremely important, reporting out those kind of figures you just saw to our accreditors, to the federal government, to other organizations in a timely and accurate fashion. We provide strategic analysis to senior leaders to help them with their decision making. We respond to internal requests from all of you for data and to external requests. And we are responsible for the transparent communication of information about the community to the community and to the public. So finally, bringing this all together, the Office of Institutional Research, there are some activities that we're engaging in this year that I think will contribute to this concept of being data rich. One, we've talked a lot and we'll continue to talk about achieving the dream. And if I had to describe it, what we're doing there in one sentence, it's we're defining, measuring, and improving student success. And in particular, from an IR perspective, we're trying to get at those leading indicators of success. It's not enough to measure the graduation rate, we have to measure what is driving that graduation rate. The institution is joining the Voluntary Framework for Accountability, which is a framework for measuring performance at a college level, student success, student outcomes, in ways that are designed to accurately reflect how colleges operate and the nature of our populations. And by doing so, we will have better language to describe the success of our students, and we'll have better comparative data to our peers so that we can really measure how we're doing. Because using in the example I started with, a 3-year graduation rate puts us against all the other institutions in the country, even if they're highly selective 4-year institutions, and it's just not the right comparative framework. And finally, we are going to implement what's called the CESI, the Community College Survey of Student Engagement, in the spring. And this is where we get to that qualitative engagement question, asking students about their educational experience at Hudson County. So those of you who are students, you could expect perhaps to be invited to do this survey in the spring. It's what's called a sample survey, so not all students will be surveyed, it will be a sample of students, but we're looking to have this survey provide invaluable data to help with these other efforts. And finally, what I would like to do and what the other members of my team would like to do is really put online an online fact book that has a rich source of data and metrics about the whole institution for everyone to use that becomes a trusted source of information. So instead of picking up the phone and saying, John, how many people were enrolled in fall 2015, or what was the graduation rate 3 years ago, we will put it all out there, it will be available, it will become a trusted source of these facts, and then we can start from there to make this a more data-rich campus. So with that, I'm going to thank you and say that I hope at your next cocktail party, if you're asked about institutional research, maybe you could define it a little bit better than I could. Thanks very much. And now, continuing on a theme of achieving the dream, I'm going to introduce Heather DeVries, who's going to tell us some updates.
Good morning, everyone. I know we're running a little bit behind schedule. We're going to move through this quickly. I have, I think, 2 slides. First of all, thank you again for your participation in Mary and Renee's visit, and a lot of you have approached either Sheila or myself looking for ways to get involved. I'm going to discuss this morning 2 ways you can immediately kind of dive in with both feet, and then our core and data teams will be reaching out to individuals or kind of soliciting calls for participation for specific tasks and actions as we move along. Mary and Renee did caution us against making committees and teams kind of too large. But the first way you can get involved, which we've been talking about, and it's almost here, is the Institutional Capacity Assessment Tool. And I guess John and I had a mind meld, and I also kind of went with kind of the big numbers we need to know. First of all, campus-wide participation from all faculty, staff, and administrators, full-time, part-time, adjuncts, is crucial in order for us to have a productive discussion when Mary and Renee return at the end of November. And then in order to really kind of forge forward in our data-informed, data-rich, building a data-rich culture, as well as kind of moving towards the development of our action plan, which Sheila and I submit, I think, in May 2020. So we want at least 75% of all full-time, part-time faculty, staff, administrators. I believe, payroll just walked in, how convenient. I believe the first adjunct pay date is the end of this week? Yes? Thank you. So I will have an accurate number of what that 75% really means at that point. I think that's the one number we're still waiting on. But we're looking for 100%. Sheila and I have graciously decided that we will settle for 75%. So please encourage, your neighbor who sits at the desk or the cubicle or the office next to you. Encourage your team members, even your supervisor. Have you taken it? Have you taken it? Have you taken it? 16 and 60. 16, you have a 16-day window to take it, and conveniently, it starts on October 16th. That was a very happy coincidence. So it's October 16th to the 31st, just before registration opens again. And it takes about 60 minutes. That's usually kind of at the long end, but about an hour for it. 0 or 3, for those of you who count your steps, you may not get any. If you have a computer in your office where you feel you can kind of shut the door and focus on this for 45 minutes or an hour, you're not getting your steps in that day. So if you, again, you can certainly do it at your desk computer, but otherwise we have 3 open computer labs that Diana Perez and her team and Tricia Clay have graciously kind of allowed us access to, not exclusive access, but access to for these 16 days, which is L419, S217, and North Hudson 224. We will be sending out all that information with hours and any kind of rules and regulations, specific software, anything like that, at a later date. And then Sheila and I are working on, and I'm in the process of finalizing, a few emails to follow up on, but we're really kind of planning for some really great prizes and incentives. But I think, we really want 100%. So we want to, offer the incentives and do it in kind of a raffle way, only if we do get the 75% minimum participation. And believe me, they're good prizes. Again, I'm not announcing because there's a little bit of negotiating left to do. But again, encourage your neighbor, encourage your colleagues and your peers and your friends. Practical matters. I almost had to call John Marlin for his repository of cat memes. I did not. Try to complete it in one sitting. Again, if you can't and you're at your own desk, this makes life a little bit easier because you're going back obviously to the same computer. It has something to do with cookies. IT can explain that to you. Otherwise, again, if you're in a lab or at a shared computer, just make sure you go back to the same one. If you don't know, say so. There's kind of a scale, a Likert-ish type scale to gauge responses on the ICAT, with the option I don't know. And that is very, very useful information, just as much as selecting one of any other options. So please, if you don't know, say so. And then prize winners, again, assuming we meet that 75% participation threshold, will be announced at the Capacity Cafe, which is, and I know you missed them, when Drs. Fifield and Garcia return, November 21st and 22nd. And so that's the first way you can really participate and jump in with both feet for achieving the dream. The second way is right across the hall, where we want everyone to kind of define what student success means to them at HCCC, faculty, staff, administrators. So Jennifer Christopher and her team created wonderful little templates, and they have Sharpies. You write it in the word bubble, hold it up, and you can have a picture taken with you, your team, your friends, in front of our Step and Repeat banner, and we can use this for publicity and even just, again, as a souvenir for you to hang in your office, that it's your commitment to student success and what that means to you. Okay, if you have any questions, just feel free to reach out. Thank you, everyone.
So I'm a Mets fan. Are there any other Mets fans in the room? Joseph Gallo, that's excellent. So this is a snippet, but the last game of the Mets season, extra innings. They aren't going to win the wild card. They could have been dispirited and disengaged. I think it's the 11th inning. Dominic Smith walks up, but I want you to see Gary Cohen, the announcer, and his level of engagement with his work and what he does.
From the injured list, his first at bat in 2 months, and he hits a walk-off home run in the season's final game.
We missed the beginning of it.
Oh, how great is this? The Never Say Die Mets finish the season on an incredible note. Oh, no.
We're good. All right, we missed the first couple, but he leaps out of his seat. He's like, oh, my God, oh, my God. Speaking of engagement. No, there's no person down there. I have an award. He's not here? Okay. We'll get to that award in a few minutes. Fast forward. In reading Todd May's works, I reflect on concepts, ideas, and questions such as the dignity of others. What makes a life meaningful? The question of decency. What makes for a good life? Throughout, I see the concept of meaning again and again, and I reflect on our mission and the work that we all do. Our focus increasingly at our community college has shifted towards student success. The student success turn has us looking with fresh eyes on everything from doors and walkways that pose a challenge to those differently abled, to policies and practices that sometimes seem to contradict our very purpose. It is hard for anyone to remain somewhat engaged or somewhat disengaged in a community college culture such as this. I would argue that the two terms engagement and meaning are very much connected. Having Professor May with us today is very timely. He has a YouTube series called Motherforkin' Morals. He is a philosophical advisor to NBC's The Good Place. Yeah. In addition to his work at Clemson University, he teaches philosophy in a maximum security prison. He is a contributor to the Stone column of the New York Times. He writes, and he writes, books with titles such as A Significant Life, Human Meaning in a Silent Universe, which he was gracious enough to sign for me. Thank you. A Decent Life, Morality for the Rest of Us. And yes, a book called The Philosophy of Foucault. Need I say any more? Please welcome Todd May.
And in addition, one more thing before I begin is that I'm going to speak, and I like having a Q&A. I like having as much as we can get. Sometimes you get questions that are difficult to answer, but Jasmine over here has graciously offered to handle any of the questions that I can't answer. Jasmine, you want to raise? So if anything comes up, please we'll refer to Jasmine. So what I want to talk with you today is about what makes life meaningful. And there are many different views, and what I'm not going to try to do is say, those views are wrong, and here's what you should think. What I do want to do is give you a tool, one tool that you might use in thinking about what would make a life meaningful. There are different theories and different views, some of them religious, some of them non-religious. The view that I'm going to put in front of you is one that is not itself religious and yet can be combined with folks who are religious. Right? Now, in approaching this, one way to begin to think about different views of what makes life meaningful is a distinction we might make between what are sometimes called, and I'll explain this, subjective views and objective views, right? So a subjective view is what makes life meaningful is what makes it meaningful for that person. They get to decide, right? For them, right, if they are feeling as though their life is going as it should, then their life is meaningful. Right? Now, sometimes one hesitation we might have about that is that when we think of something as meaningful, sometimes we want to think, well, it's more than just what makes a person happy. Right? Something has to be happening, right? That isn't simply about the person's feeling good about themselves if we're going to use the word meaningful. Right? But if we switch over to the objective side, right, what makes a life meaningful is something that you do or someone that you be that's, say, a good person. Right? But the worry about that side, if we just focus there, is that if you would look just objectively, a person can be doing something that's good and yet not feeling involved in it. Right? They're going through the motions. They're just doing what they think needs to be done. And it's not clear that we want to use the word meaningful for that. Right? We might use the term happiness for the subjective side, and we might use the term goodness, moral goodness for the objective side. But can there be something else? Right? Can there be another way of maybe bringing these two sides together so that we can have another way of thinking about our lives, right? That isn't simply a matter of happiness and goodness. It isn't simply that, okay, I'm going to go be good and then I'm going to go be happy, right? There's another way I want to put on the table for us to begin to think about what makes a life meaningful. Now, I'm going to go into this, but let me just ask before I do, right? I've been teaching in South Carolina. I'm from New York. As you all know, New Yorkers tend to speak quickly. Is my pace okay? Yes. This is okay. Too slow. All right, so here's what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to tell you guys. So, I want to begin this with a phrase from a philosopher. Her name is Susan Wolf. She teaches at the University of North Carolina. It's a phrase that only a philosopher could love. Right? She says, a meaningful life is one where, she says, subjective engagement meets objective worthwhileness. Right? So, yeah, I know, trust me, we're going to get through this, right? But here's the idea, that you want to be caught up in something, right? You want to feel you're engaged, you're participating, you're part of it, on the one hand. But you want to be part of something that itself is worth being part of. That's the objective side. So it isn't simply a matter of how you're feeling, it's also a matter of what it is that you're doing. And when she writes about this, the subjective engagement side, we can be fairly clear on that. You know when you're caught up with something, right? When you're in the flow, right? When things are moving along, right? The tricky part is the objective side. And the question is, how might we think about this if we're not just going to think about being caught up in being morally good? Is there another way to think about this? And when she was asked the question, she balked. She said, well, I think there's lots of ways to do this. And I read this and I thought, well, okay, now there's something for me to do, right? I'm going to think about ways in which we can think about that objective side. That side of looking and saying, what's the worthwhileness here? And in doing that, I want to step back from thinking about an activity or a set of activities or a project. Right? One of the philosophers I enjoy reading, enjoy thinking about after I've read, he's not much fun to read, is Aristotle, right? And Aristotle thinks in terms of lifespans, right? He thinks in terms of life trajectories. And so if we're thinking about worthwhileness, maybe what we can think about is not simply doing this thing that's worthwhile and doing that thing that's worthwhile and doing another thing that's worthwhile, but thinking about what kinds of themes might characterize our lives. As we look and reflect upon our lives, what kinds of themes might be there that would be worthwhile themes for us to be engaged in, things that we might see ourselves as having engaged in, as wanting to engage in. And life trajectories, they have these themes, right? I'm going to talk a little bit about curiosity and intensity, right? Spirituality, spontaneity. So these are themes that can characterize a life. But not all themes that characterize a life have values, right? They're not all, we don't value all of them, right? So there can be themes of, let's say, depression as one, right? There's certain themes of negativity, right? I'll give you an example, right? My mother, bless her heart, as we say in South Carolina, is very supportive, but as negative as the day is long. Several years ago, there was blankets of snow, right? There was she's in Connecticut, right? And it just snowed and piled up and piled up and piled up, and there were just feet of snow everywhere, right? I don't know how badly it hit Jersey. I mean, I know it was a lot on the coast, right? But I would call her, and things were terrible because the snow was piled up, and she can't go out. And finally, I'm looking, and it's in early March, and I'm seeing that the weather's going to change. It's going up into the 40s and then the 50s. And I call her and say, hey, look, Ma, things are going to be okay, right? I'm looking at like a 10-day forecast, and it's going up, and the snow's going to melt. And she says, oh, God, yeah, but then you know what it's like, right? Right? The snow melts, it warms up, it gets hot, it's summer, and it's awful, right? Right. And I quote, that was. So not all themes that characterize a life are going to be themes we want to embrace. But there are themes that we might want to embrace, right? These themes, adventurousness, intensity, curiosity, spirituality, spontaneity, right? These are themes that can characterize our lives if we reflect on them. And not only can they characterize our lives, but they have, right, objective criteria. Right? Thinking, for instance, that you're adventurous doesn't make you adventurous. Right? My kids, when they were kids, they go to the mall. We're going on an adventure. We're going to the mall. I'm like, no, you're not going on an adventure, right? But, right, there can be themes of adventurousness where you're getting wide of yourself, right? Isn't that an aspect of adventurousness? You're getting wide of yourself. You're doing something, right, that puts you in maybe a vulnerable situation, right? And if you do that once, okay, you do it, right? But suppose that becomes a theme for your life, that you're pushing yourself to get wide of yourself, to make yourself vulnerable, right? So my youngest son, for instance, is now a mountain climber out in Colorado, right? That's adventurousness. It's the kind of adventurousness that makes me wish he was back at the mall. But that's where you're getting wide of yourself, right? When I taught in one of the times I taught in the prison, I presented this theme of adventurousness, and I got a really interesting response from one of my students, who said, "Well, imagine somebody who lives way out where there's no population or anything like that, and the idea of going to a mall where there's a lot of people and a lot of activity comes. Wouldn't that for that person be an adventure?" Which I thought was a good point and was right. But the question I wanted to pose back to him was, well, that's a one-off, right? That's an adventure. but what would make that person's life characterized by a theme of adventurousness, right? Because it goes back to the mall another time, and now now we don't have adventure, right? And so the students started to think, and he said, do I have to do it with malls? And I said, yes, you have to do it with malls, right? So the idea arose that, well, he would try to find malls in different places with different kinds of populations and then sort of show up at these different. So, okay, now we're developing a theme, right? A theme, but that theme is one that, if I say has objective criteria, what I mean is thinking it so doesn't make it so, right? There are ways we can tell if a person is being adventurous, right? If a person's being intense, right? If a person's being spontaneous, right? For my own part, right, I like the theme of intensity. The theme of spontaneity, I'm not so good at, right? I have a friend who's been trying to work with me on this. He said, look, let's go out for lunch, just, this spontaneous. I said, that's great. What's next Tuesday like for you, right? So it's not something that I do, right, terribly well. I would like to do it better, right? But as I look at my life, I see certain themes, some of them positive, right, and some of them not so positive. And in seeing those themes, right, I ask myself, which among them would I like to cultivate? And that helps me reflect on my life, right, and helps me, right, moving forward to ask where I would want to go, right? I've hit an age where it's easy, even though I would like to be, right, more intensely involved, it's easy to sort of sit back a little bit. And now if I reflect on that, I can say to myself, yeah, but this isn't what you want, right? It gives me a place to reflect and move forward, right? So, I mean, we're talking about intensity, we're talking about spontaneity. At one of the early talks I gave around this, a person was asking about religion, which I had mentioned briefly, and I said, one of the things that can characterize a life, right, is a life of spirituality, right? That spirituality might be religious, or it might not be religious. But a life of spirituality is when you're engaged with something that you think is transcendent, right? It can be a deity, right? But if you're a Buddhist, right, it can be a certain sense of oneness of the universe. But that sense of oneness isn't something you just think, right? It's something that engages you, something that you take up, something you participate in, right? We don't call a person spiritual who shows up to church in order to make network connections to get a better job, right? Right. But we do call them spiritual if they integrate that into their lives. Again, there's objective criteria here. And in thinking about those objective criteria, we can begin to move in a way that gives us a reflective space. Now, I want to say a couple of things about this, right? And again, I want to leave a lot of time for discussion, but I want to have this frame on the table for us to make sure we feel clear on this, right? Meaningfulness in this sense, these values, I call them, by the way, I call them narrative values. And the reason I call them narrative values is that they're the kinds of themes that you see in a life story, right? So if you read a novel, there are themes that appear in the novel or across those novels, narrative themes, right? So I call these narrative values narrative because they're characterizing a life, values because they're positive, right? They're things that we would want to have, right? And one of the things that strikes me about this as I began to think about it is that I think we actually, many of us do think like this, right? We think like this informally, right? We think about our lives and these ideas come up, but we don't think about them systematically. And I realized that they hadn't been discussed, right, in philosophy, and they do come up for us. And I thought maybe if I can think about this systematically, then, right, we can sort of really hone a tool, right? And that's where the book comes from, and that's the frame I'm trying to give you today. But one thing to notice about these themes is that these themes are not necessarily themes that are moral themes. There can be a tension between narrative values, the themes that we think narratively, on the one hand and morality on the other. And we can see this, right? And I think we can relate to a certain ambivalence that we might have. So for instance, right, this is sort of a classic example. You think of like the rock star, right, a music star that's really intense. And you admire that intensity. Yet on the other hand, right, there are sometimes people who can be callous toward others, right? They leave bodies in their wake as they're going along. And it's sometimes the intensity, right, that does it, the intensity of the involvement that makes them not as sort of morally good to others as they might be, right? Now, I think in a lot of cases, our relationship to that is not simply one of condemnation. Look, they should be better, right? But ambivalence. There's something we admire in that intensity. At the same time, there's something that troubles us about the way they behave, right? One of the, my favorite author, novelist, is William Faulkner, right? And Faulkner writes extremely intense novels, right? And you think that a person who does this is really going to be able to relate to the depth and darkness of the human condition. And on all accounts, he was an awful human being, right? I know one of my professors at college said that he had an office next to Faulkner's at the University of Mississippi, and young writers would come in and they'd want to talk to the great William Faulkner, and Faulkner would just abuse them, right? And they would walk out of his office crying. It was, and you think, right, right, of course, this is not okay, right? But this is where the ambivalence comes in, right? That we admire certain themes of their lives on the one hand, but on the other hand, right, we feel like there are moral failings here. And I think part of getting older, right, part of developing a certain maturity, at least those who've developed this maturity tell me, right, is beginning to see life, the lives of others as nuanced, right? Not simply as this or that, but encompassing many different aspects. And you know, we live in a time, right, where that in fact isn't done as much, right? We're often so polarized that when we see someone, right, we put them in a category, we accept them, we reject them, but we don't see that they might have other sides to them. And one of the things that thinking in terms of these narrative values might do for us is allow us to see, look, these people that we are engaged in might be more complicated than we think. They might be, on the one hand, right, morally good people whose lives feel alienated to them. We admire them on the surface, then we get to know them, and things don't look quite so rosy. Or we might see them as people who are engaged in interesting and creative activities on the one hand, but on the other hand, right, have moral failings, and come to a judgment of them that isn't simply a judgment that they're okay or they're not okay, right? But rather, right, that there are aspects and sides to them, right, that might get revealed if we look, and if we have different, I'll use the word normative criteria, or different ways of seeing who they are and what might or might not be positive about them, right? And what I'm suggesting is one way to look at lives of other people, but also one way to reflect on our own lives, is to ask about the themes that characterize it. What kinds of life have I been living? If I reflect on that life, or if I look at another person's life, what kinds of themes will I see there, and is there value to those? And I've been asked, well, look, give us a list. What are the values, right? And my answer is, well, look, I'm just beginning, right? This is not something that's been thought about before. There's some obvious ones, right? Right, and I've mentioned them, right? And we generally know what they are. Although, but I should say this, that we generally know what they are, but my guess is that they're also a bit culturally specific. That's to say, life themes that in one culture may not be the same valuable life themes in another culture, and that seems perfectly fine, right? But, right, and so among us, right, let's just say folks in New York and New Jersey, right, the intensity, right, spontaneity, right, spirituality, curiosity, loyalty, steadfastness, right, these are all themes that we recognize can characterize a life and give it a value. And if the person is subjectively engaged, remember, subjective engagement, objective worthwhile, if the person's caught up in it, right, then in fact, right, we can see, right, a meaningful character to their lives. Okay? Now I'm going to say one more thing before I conclude, then we're going to go to some questions. By the way, Jasmine, how am I doing?
Great.
Okay, I'm doing okay. All right. Right. You don't need to jump in and, okay. There are quirks to this, right? One of the odd quirks to this is that a person can be subjectively engaged, caught up, involved in a theme that makes their lives worthwhile, but it's not the theme that they think makes their life worthwhile. That is to say, they can have a meaningful life and be wrong about what it's meaningful about, right? And I'll give you an example, right? So I had an uncle, and the uncle thought of himself as subtle, right? And he valued that. And he was anything but, right? He would give a gift to someone, right? And he'd look at you as he was giving this gift like as though nobody could see. Like, I'm so subtle, it's not the case that everybody in the room just saw what happened, right? He was very engaged, and he was deeply loyal, right? So here was a guy who was loyal, engaged in his loyalty, thought of himself as embodying another theme. I'm a subtle guy, right? But he wasn't, right? So just as you don't get to decide whether or not you're adventurous or intense, there are criteria for that, right? You don't get, right? You can be wrong about the thing that actually is lending meaning to your life, right? So, right, we can have conflicts between meaningfulness and morality. We can have mistakes about it. But what all of this gives us, right, is a way not simply to ask about actions that we do or even particular projects that we engage in. It's a way of seeing the trajectory of our lives, right, the arc of our lives, under a light that begins to allow us to reflect in ways that we might not otherwise do, but in ways that that sometimes come up for us, right, less systematically. Right? Now, what I want to do is this, right? When Dr. Friedman approached me, I said, I like to spend a lot of time, once I put a frame on the table, discussing and turning it over. And I suggested that one of the columns I had written for the Stone, right, was on this idea. And it was a short column. So I said, how about I send this to you? And how about you give it to a few students, and the students could read it, and then they can have questions, right? And then we can start off that way. Usually when I give a talk, I ask for the first questions to be from students, because you know what happens, right? Right? I mean, you ask for questions, and a bunch of professors shoot up their hands, and the students are like, okay, we're pretty much toast here, right? So I always ask for the first couple questions to be from students, right? So, Jasmine, you look like you're holding this thing, right? Are the folks here with yeah, your name is? Roderick? Yeah, I'm Todd. Roger. Okay. Good. That's not your name.
But, well, I guess you like.
You want? You okay with that?
Yeah.
Good. Good.
So, myself, I came here because for like a year now, I've been trying to look for a sense of meaning in
Good.
life. And I noticed that, at least in my perspective, what I try to do is try to avoid, I guess, as much suffering as there's already is in life.
Good.
So that's, oh, thank you. So what I try to do is try to get rid of as much suffering as possible in life, and that's and doing things that would lead to a substantial and meaningful
Good.
kind of
Good.
way. But do you think that maybe if, let's say I'm adventurous,
Good.
for example, like you mentioned, but there's norms in society for that would lead me to be more more conscious of what's happening and not really do things spontaneously. And do you think that there's an effect on that, on how humans behave? Do you is that part of living a meaningful life?
Good. Roger, this is great. This is great. Because we haven't talked a lot about the role of social norms, right, in all of this, right? And one of the things that I have noticed is that, say you and I are one generation removed, roughly, okay? Okay, next question. Don't let the hair bit fool you. In looking at this, we haven't looked at social, but one of the things, and I talk about this with my students, is when I got out of school, getting a job was not a big deal, right? The economic situation was such that you could take a low-level job, get paid enough to go along, right? Figure out what you wanted to do, right? But that's not where you are, right? You guys have a lot of pressure. There's economic pressure. I mean, internships that you used to get paid for, they don't get paid for now, right? Minimum wage doesn't do anything, right? And so there are social pressures, right? Now, those are economic social pressures, but those social pressures also lead to parental social pressures, right? You need to get a job because here's what it's like, right?
Another thing is, as a teenager, it took a lot of time for me to realize that I needed to make my own sacrifice, not financially speaking, but of what I wanted to pursue.
Mm-hmm.
I think because of that, I lived a miserable 4 years of high school because I always thought, what am I gonna do? Well, I want that. Like my parents say, well, you should go to business, but I suck at math. So like, is there something else that I can do that can give me that financial support that I need? And it was terrible.
Yeah.
It was terrible.
Yes. Yes.
It took me a long time.
Yes, yeah. And I think one of the things that happens is that we get taught to respond to social pressures. And in getting taught to respond to social pressures, we don't reflect and ask ourselves, what might we want, right? But if we're going to reflect and ask ourselves, what might we want, it's good to have tools to do this, right? And so what I'm suggesting is not that this is the tool, right? But in thinking about themes that might characterize your life, what might be themes, right, that you would want to embrace and endorse, which doesn't mean, Roger, that you get to do it right away. Yeah, it's something you may think, this is a way I want to head, and what might I do in order to get that way, right? And look, let's face it, my son who gets to climb rocks, right? He gets to climb rocks because he was born in a fortunate situation where his parents could afford to get him through college so that he would have time, right? A lot of folks are not in that spot, right? And so, and the folks who are not in that spot, right? What I want to say is that doesn't mean you don't get to have a life theme, right? But what that means is that depending on the life theme you pick, you may want to choose. You may want to look and say, here's where I want to go, but I can't go there now. But if I do this now, that will head me in that direction, right? See what I mean? Yeah.
I think that's one of the things that was missing. It was the tools necessary.
Yes.
And so, because you lack the tools and lack of, I guess, direction, because, sometimes parents have children without necessarily being parents.
Yes.
And so, having that lack of direction makes you really think about the pressure.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. No, I think that I really appreciate this line of thought. I think that's exactly right, and it allows us to see the themes I'm talking about, right, in a wider context. That's great. Now, who else had the article here? I'm seeing, wait, Jasmine, did you?
Yeah, I have it with me. I did read it. I'm sorry.
Jasmine, I don't care. They're going to pay me whether you read this or not. I don't really.
Okay, so I don't think this is much of a question, but it was just like feedback.
Sure.
I really do appreciate the article because it really made me reflect on my own life, and I think my personal experiences with life made my life feel more meaningful versus when I was much younger and went through some life-changing situations, and that's when my life became more meaningful because I could reflect on what took place in my life, and then I realized that life is very fragile, and then life is very, it could manifest in different ways, and it's about looking at the opportunities and changing your life around in order to embrace the meaningfulness of your life, in order to get that fulfillment or happiness or the joy you're looking to seek. And I think that when you did say that that we're currently encouraged to think of ourselves either as consumers or as entrepreneurs, that we're so marginalized in either being that or this, how does one really find meaning if you're stuck to choose between the two?
Good. Yes, yes. Let me say something about that. That's really good, Jess. But am I okay on time? Okay. Just when you get bored, just let me know. Okay. So no, and this is something I hadn't talked about, but it's something I've written more in another book that and it comes back a bit to the issue of economics, right? Is that we are encouraged in this period to be one of two things and sometimes both, right? To be what the philosopher Foucault called, right, entrepreneurs of ourselves, right? Where what we're supposed to do is decide what our resources are and invest them, right, for return, right? That's on the one hand. On the other hand, consumers, right, just buy stuff, right? And it seems to me, right, that this has been going on for I'm dating it about 30, 40 years, right? And it's a social pressure, and what it does is it excludes you from other ways in which you might consider your life, right? It can influence you to think about not just your job, but your life in economic terms. Right? What is it that I am investing, and what is the return that I'm getting on that investment? And that seems to me a way of thinking about your life that excludes so much of what makes a life rich. But to step back from this, and Jasmine, I think this is what you're saying, to step back from that is, if you don't have any tools, is hard to do, right? And so maybe in thinking about these life themes, now we have tools, right? And again, I don't want to say these are the only tools, right? But we can have at least one set of tools where we say, okay, now I can begin to take a grasp of my life reflectively. And in doing that, right, be able to say, here's what has been valuable, and here's what I would like to keep valuable. Jasmine, that's what I hear you saying. Am I catching it? Yes. I think that's right. And it seems to me when philosophy is done well, when it works, all it is systematic reflection on who we are and what we're about, right? And this is unfortunate to me in good part because I see so many of my philosophical peers writing things that you've got to have a PhD to understand, right? And then, or doing this thing, and now the academics are going to. This is where I get danger. I go in danger of academics, which is there's so many academics who they carve out this little space for themselves, right? This little academic, and then they like police it, right? No, you can't. You come on my space, you have to quote me, right? They police that little space, and philosophy should not be about that. I mean, yes, there are technical problems, right? And there are things that require abstraction in philosophy. Yes, of course, right? But it also seems that the fundamental character of philosophy should be reflecting on who we are and what we're about, and on questions like what's just, what might my life mean, how should I act, questions like that. When I'm asked about philosophy, I said, philosophy used to be everything, right? All knowledge was philosophy. Aristotle had books on biology and psychology and astronomy. He had books on everything, right? And what happens is certain methodologies develop, right? And the scientific methodologies develop, and these sciences then break off from philosophy. And then students will sometimes say, well, look, you don't have a methodology. You just have like reflection and thinking and reason. So why bother? I said, well, the question is, why bother asking how should we act, right? What kinds of beings are we? How shall we think of one another? What makes our life meaningful? So what philosophy does, I think, when it's doing something, right, that's really worthwhile, is to take the really important questions in our lives that don't have, right, systematic ways of being able to answer, and then grappling and trying to reflect on them. And if it works, it comes back, it gives us a tool for thinking. Good. Roger, hold on one second. Is there somebody else with the, before I want to come back to you, but I want to say, is there somebody else with the article with the question? I just want to make sure. We're good? All right, Roger, let me come back to you. Okay. By the way, you say you don't do math well, right? I don't do math well, right? And this is a link across generations. just so we're clear here.
Last semester I had a business administration major and I just changed it to psychology. So.
Yeah. Good. And by the way, one of the students that I'm now teaching, right, taking 2 courses with me, was a civil engineering major, and oh, sorry, did I just hit a nerve?
No, I used to be an engineer.
Okay, great. Okay, good. You'll like this because she was offered this internship, right, in civil engineering that really would have done well, right? And she was looking at that internship and she said, "It's not me. I can't do that," right? And she's a philosophy major now, right? Yeah, she's a, right. Which I always tell people is a great undergraduate major, not so great in terms of graduate school because there are no jobs. But where are we at? Dr. Phoebe, should we have a little more? So let me open up there. I know there's the people sitting in the back of the room. Like there's you know the back of the room guys, right? They sit there, they put their feet up, right? So I don't know if you guys have something or you're just waiting to get entertained over there.
I mean, I haven't asked the question yet.
let me let a couple people in. Okay. Right here, your name is? Evie? Evie, thank you, yes.
I read what you had been and then I started thinking the question, what is the point of understanding?
Evie, hold on one second, get you the mic.
Oh, okay. Hello. When I was reading, I stopped at the question that says, what is the point of understanding what makes life meaningful? Why not just live it? I started reflecting on that because for a lot of years, I was living in destruction. I was living in, my life was meaningless to me. And it took me a long time to realize that no matter how society or family members or even friends viewed my meaningless, whether it was meaningful or not meaningful, I had to make a change. And I chose to stop existing and start living. And it's been a struggle, however, today, from where I used to be till now, I'm very proud of myself because I've accomplished a whole bunch of, how do I say it? I started a new life. Not that I'll ever forget my old life. However, it teaches me not to forget who I am and where I came from and who I've become today. And basically what I'm trying to say is that I thought that I was never going to be able to come back to college because I felt a sense of worthlessness. And one day I just decided and I said, you know what? I'm a very determined individual. And if I was reckless and crazy then, and I didn't let anything stop me from so-called my adventurous madness, why should I let my insecurity stop me from reaching my potential and the goals that I need to strive to be a better person, not for anyone else, but just for me, and just give out that information that led me to be where I am today.
Yeah, yeah. And Evie, first, thanks for sharing that. Let me. One of the things that I always try to keep in mind, right, is my great good fortune. I was lucky, right? Middle class to upper middle class parents. They paid for college. The question in my family was not, are you going to college? The question is, which college are you going to, right? And so one of the things I try to do is, it wouldn't be paying it back because I'm not giving back to rich people, right? So it's paying it forward, right? And when I teach in the prison, right, there are people, I got a student right now, when I'm teaching philosophy, who's asking graduate student level questions, right? I mean, they're great questions. And I think, as the phrase goes, but for the grace of God, right? I'd be there, and he'd be teaching me, right? And in recognizing, this is part of what it is, I think, to recognize different aspects of others. But Evie, as you're talking about, different aspects of ourselves, right? That I'm not just reckless, right? I'm not just a person who tosses things away. There are other aspects to who I am. And if I can embrace those other aspects to who I am, that will allow me to now involve myself in the themes that I want to involve myself in. Now, having said that, I'm going to ask you a quick question, which you can answer or not as you like, right? As we've talked about this, right, do you resonate with a theme that you think, yeah, that's a theme that I'm either embracing or moving to embrace, right? I put you on the spot, and please feel free not to say, right?
No, it's okay. When I was speaking about my situation, is that I'm a recovering addict.
Okay.
And I'm a recovering addict, and I was in destruction on and off for 16 years. And I thought I was living the good life of destruction because it was okay, because everybody else around me lived the same life.
Right, that's what you saw.
Exactly, that was my perception of what I saw. But for me, is realizing that I do have potential and that I can succeed. And my goal is to complete my college at HCCC and continue forward to a 4-year college and become a drug counselor so I could give back. So I could give back what was basically given to me without an ulterior motive. It was just to help me live and not exist, but to live again. So.
And what it sounds like, as you're talking, Evie, is I'm thinking steadfastness. There's a certain, you grab hold, right, and like a pit bull, right? Oh, and you don't let go, right?
Oh, I don't plan to.
Right, yeah.
I don't plan to.
Good. Do we have time to go over here? Okay.
After that, this is less deep, but I was at a park recently, and I have bad knees, so I only walk as far as my knees will go. And sometimes I'll not go very far because I want to be able to get back. And there was a gaggle of geese, and they took off, and I noticed there was a little white dog that was chasing them. And the owner said, she's 11 years old, she doesn't have many more years left, and she's always wanted to chase the geese. So we're going to let her off the leash every time we see a gaggle of geese. So I have a little dog. I've been letting my dog off the leash, and we've been going to places where I would not normally go. So I think the meaning of life is to go to places that you don't think you should go, to try things, to get off the leash, to try stuff, to see how far you can go and not let things limit you and where you happen to go. So that's my philosophy.
Yeah, and let me say this, right? And here's the part where I always try to say there's always more. I think that's one really important meaning, right? But I want to give you another one, just because it's not, so we're not exclusive here, right? That there are people who, and it comes back to even steadfast, who hold on to something, and it's not what else they can see, but they move in. And the model for that, for me, right, is I listen to a lot of jazz. So there's a jazz saxophone, there was a jazz saxophonist, John Coltrane, right? And Coltrane was, everybody who plays jazz saxophone has a debt to him. They all play in his shadow. And he was interviewed once, and he was asked, what would you do if you didn't play the saxophone? Because he would get excited when like new scales that he could practice came down, and he'd go practice them 6, 7, 8 hours, right? And they asked him, what would you do if, right, you couldn't play the saxophone? And he said, playing the saxophone is the only thing I know how to do. There isn't something else, right? So I want to say, being adventurous, yes, but then for some people, getting onto something and going deeper and deeper and deeper into it, that's another way, where you're not seeing what else is out there, but you're just saying, what can I keep going into with this, right? And if we think about these different themes, what I'm hoping is that we'll begin to see different kinds of lives that can have different attractions, right, and different ways of being, right, steadfastness or adventurousness or others as well, right? There's a hand to one more you say? Okay, so there's one right there.
I have 2 questions. I'll put the topics to you. Tell me which one. I don't need that.
Okay.
I'll put them. Yeah, I don't need a microphone.
For the recording.
All right. Sorry, they were recording. I didn't know that. Hi, Dr. May. How are you? I have 2 questions. I don't want to take up a lot of time, so I'll put 2 topics toward you. You take the one you want. Kenneth Lonergan.
Yep.
Or sports.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going with the Lonergan.
You're Lonergan.
Okay.
You talked earlier about people having other sides of themselves, and you are the author of 15 books. And full disclosure, I'm the theater professor here.
Okay.
So I know his plays inside and out. And I'm wondering how you got to a book about and I might, if I might say, a playwright / filmmaker.
Right.
Like how did you get to, why are you writing a book about that as someone who's dedicated their life to philosophy?
Good. So just a word about Kenneth Lonergan, just so people know. So he's had a number of plays. He's done 3 movies. The one you might most likely would have heard about is Manchester by the Sea, right? A beautiful and devastating film. I'll give you the short answer and then just expand it just a bit, right? The short answer is the reason that I wrote a book on Lonergan, which is coming, it's not out, but it's coming out in February, is that I was asked. That's the short answer, right? I'll give you a little bit. I know a guy, I know a guy. You need help, I know a guy. He's doing a series called Philosophical Filmmakers. Philosophers writing books on filmmakers that they like. And he asked me, would I write a book on this? And I said, I don't know that much about film. And he said, that's not that kind of series, right? You don't have to know a lot about film. The idea is, look at filmmakers that have meant something to you. And you take a filmmaker and you write a book. And he said, is there somebody you would like? Right? And there's a Greek filmmaker who I really liked, Theo Angelopoulos. But first he was taken, and second, he should be written by a person who speaks Greek. So and Lonergan's the other one. And there were a couple of reasons that Lonergan was a good choice. One of them is he only has 3 films, right? No, not that. It's that if you only have 3 films, I can do lots of in-depth work with each film, right? So I don't have to, I'm not worried about covering all the films and leaving films out. I can really go in depth in it, right? But another reason, this comes back to a theme we've been talking about, is that Lonergan is a master, among other things, And by the way, his films, as you know, they're theater films, right? I mean, he doesn't do special effects. He does theater. When he's doing films, he's also doing theater, right? But one of the things he's a master at is revealing other sides of people, letting them come out, right? So that you can see the complexity of people, right? So I'll just say this, and then I'm not going to ruin the plot of Manchester by the Sea. I would just say, if you haven't seen it, you should on a day when you're feeling emotionally strong, right? But it opens with someone, right, who just acts like a jerk, right? As Casey Affleck is, and you think this is, and as it unfolds, you're seeing other aspects of him, and what appeared initially, right, doesn't appear, right, as the film goes on, right? And a lesser-known film that does the same thing is his first film, You Can Count on Me. I was at the Good Place with the writers. We got to talk over lunch, and we're talking about films that we liked. And several of the writers said they thought that You Can Count on Me is the best film that was ever made, right? Because it takes something that's very pedestrian, right, and unfolds aspects of it so it gets deeper and deeper and deeper. So I would, in thinking about different aspects of people, I would, I think Lonergan is great at doing that. The themes that I talked about in the book were, the first one was Nietzsche says, "What doesn't kill me makes me stronger," right? And that's clearly wrong. And so I use his films to show that. Then the second one's the self-deception, and the third one is moral complexity, right? That we're always more complex than we think. And that theme struck me for reasons that right now that we've been talking, right, should be clear. Seeing complexity and seeing the other sides of folks. Right, good, we're good. Well, thank you so much for this time.
It's somebody's birthday in the room today. Oh, there's more than one. Oh, no, you know who it is. Damn. That same individual has shown himself in the last year and more to be an incredible leader. And he's taken on responsibilities. He's gotten involved and engaged in ways that he wasn't necessarily before. And he's loving it, and he brings a lot of ideas to the table, and he wants to be part of this, and he wants to move John's needle past 13%. That is for sure. And he's having great results because he believes in a team-based approach. He believes in developing the people that are on his team. And he is really just, it's been incredible getting to know him. So I wanted to start a tradition of recognizing an individual with the Hudson County Community College Leadership Award and present it to Jose Lowe in recognition. Presented to Jose Lowe in recognition of your continued hard work, engagement, and commitment to the students of Hudson County Community College. You have established yourself as a leader, role model, and collaborator. October 2019. Congratulations.
Well, it's a surprise. Well, thank you very much, everyone. Once again, yes, today's my birthday, and what a day to celebrate a birthday by just receiving such honor. And it's good to see my staff here also present. Like I always say, without them, it wouldn't be the office. So I'm always supporting their dreams and goals because they also support my dreams and goals. And it's a collaborative approach, and our goals are endless, and they know that. Once again, thank you, everyone, and see you around. Thank you.
So please check your program for the activities this afternoon, including We'll regroup here for those who wish to continue the conversation with Todd May. Thank you so much for an inspiring, thoughtful, reflective talk and engaged discussion. Thank you.